What is digital cinema? In the modern age of cinema, instead of using celluloid film and props and models, most film producers now use digital cameras which upload the movie onto a hard drive and mostly rely on CGI to create the illusion of fantasy for their audiences. This leads us onto the argument of digital aesthetics in cinema. Many theorists are against the digitalization of film and believe that it is destroying the art of filmmaking itself. Stephen Prince argues that there is nothing essentially new about digital cinema. The digitality is in fact an inferior substitute to what the celluloid image and traditional exhibition provides. In this video essay, I will be exploring the digital aesthetics in film by using 2 case studies, and I will be challenging the notion of what cinema is in the digital age. In 2015 leading up to 2019, a new generation of Star Wars films were released. Although many concepts of the story relating to the previous films remain similar, you can very clearly see a difference with the cinematography and digital advancements that came along with the new movies. In the older films that were released between the years 1970 and 1980, back before the advancements of technology we have today, instead of animating creatures on a computer, they used stop motion to add more life to the props that were used on set. The special effects team even handmade small-scale models of each and every spacecraft and held them up in front of a blue screen so they looked like they were flying through space. The creators of the first Star Wars trilogy also made puppets for the non-human creatures and performed their roles while being cleverly hidden on set. Most importantly, unlike most films that are made today, the whole of the first trilogy of the Star Wars films were filmed on the Panavision PS4 35mm camera, which used celluloid film. This meant that the crew had to do hundreds of takes for just one scene to get it perfectly right because they couldn't watch back the footage that they just filmed straight away. In contrast to this, in the 2015 to 2019 Star Wars trilogy, the production team took a different digital approach when making these films. In the last movie of the trilogy, The Rise of Skywalker, they used CGI to animate the movements of the vehicles they used in the movies. For example, when filming one of the scenes in the desert, they filmed on location in front of a large green screen and played out the scene there. Later on, they used CGI animation to add in the background, scenery, and add detail to the vehicle they were in. By using CGI, they were even able to color correct the whole scene to make it more digitally aesthetic. This was beneficial in the production process of making the new films because in comparison to the first trilogy, it would take up to a month to stop motion animate just 5-second clips that were complicated to make. Another example of how the digital aesthetics and cinematography have changed between the first and last trilogy is that in the new Star Wars movies they use animatronics to bring the alien creatures to life on set and control them with remote controls while filming, whereas in the older films they use hand puppets for the alien creatures and cleverly hid the puppeteers behind elements of the set. Both methods that were used are effective on bringing man-made creatures to life and have the same level of difficulty. By using the animatronics, it gives the puppeteers the ability to create more facial expressions for the creatures, and therefore this aids in the ability to make the creatures more lifelike and realistic. This furthermore leads us onto the discussion of whether the evolution of digital cinema has affected the value of what film is in the digital age. John Belton in 2002 argued that the digitalization of cinema has offered nothing new for audiences, and that without outside or technical knowledge, an audience may not necessarily perceive whether what they are watching was shot, manipulated, edited, or distributed digitally. Also, Ben Fritz in 2014 said, "There is something about film that is undeniably beautiful, undeniably organic, and natural and real." With this, it can be argued that the digitalization of aesthetics in cinema isn't doing anything special that hasn't already been done. An example to support this is that the first trilogy Star Wars film did just fine on its own before the digital advancements of cinema, and it became a box office hit. Another way that can be argued to challenge digital aesthetics in cinema is that the digitalization has taken away the art and beauty behind filmmaking, and how, in Fritz's words, a film can feel undeniably organic and natural and real. An example of this is from Paul Houston, who was one of the model makers in the first Star Wars films, and he talks about becoming engrossed in making something, and how working so long and hard on making something can be really rewarding. Whereas when things are now usually made with CGI, not as much physical work goes into making something that could be amazing, and this destroys the whole art of cinematography in cinema. To conclude, the production teams of cinema before the digital age faced many challenges and obstacles that they had to overcome when making their films, and they had to get the cinematography perfect in the shot because unlike the digital technology that can be used today, the editors can't go back and color correct or change anything in the scene. So therefore, there are benefits in the digitalization of cinema because it makes filmmaking so much more easier. But the cost of this is that theorists argue that it is taking away the art and authenticity of film, such as the only reason filmmakers use celluloid film nowadays is because it is digitally aesthetic, and the audiences are overlooking the beauty and tradition of using celluloid film.